Good evening and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns Hour here on YouTube and DLive. My name is Tom Luongo. It is Friday, June 14th. Yeah, when you work from home, days all just run together. 2019, it's a Friday. We're going to do this about the next hour or so. We got a lot to talk about, and I have not, on a subject that I have not weighed in on yet, either in print or here on YouTube, because, well, I've been watching the traffic splash by. I've been working on other things, and I just wanted to see how these things would fall out over time, because, you know, to rush in and look for the immediate reaction, kind of what everybody's been doing. And to me, this Gulf of Oman incident is one of those things that you really don't want to rush to judgment on. And I wish that the American government would take that advice, because coming out immediately and just blaming Iran for it is the most obvious play they could make, even though it doesn't make any sense. So let's go over the guts of it real quick. Not that we need to rehash a lot of it. I know you guys know most of what's going on, but let's make sure that, you know, those of you who are new to the stream and new to what's going on here, that you have an idea of what I'm talking about. So yesterday morning, that would be Thursday, June 13th, there was an incident in the Gulf of Oman where a couple of oil tankers were attacked by somebody. The American government saying it was Iran. There's conflicting reports of sailors being detained. The ships were on fire. There were multiple reports of one sunk, then it didn't, then this, then that. The fog of war is up. The disinformation campaign is in place. And the people who routinely lie about everything should be your first suspects as the perpetrators, because that's the way things are supposed to go. Now, I know this is anathema on YouTube anymore. It's probably even against the terms of service to use the words false flag. But we're going to do it anyway, because we're not a monetized channel and we don't care. So demonetize me all you want, YouTube. I still don't pay. I still don't have an AdWords account. And that is on purpose. So, because at the end of the day, if you want to be free of editorial control over your content, then you need to not take money from somebody else and then open yourselves up to that level of censorship. So we're not going to do that. So what happened? We don't know. But what we do know is that most likely this was not Iran. And the reason for this is, and I think Elijah Magnier had the most cogent analysis that I saw so far, was that nothing about this attack was similar to the one on the oil tankers that were docked last month, right? Those were done with deep sea divers and mines, and they were done in such a way as to send a message. That Magnier was the only one really saying that was Iran, while everybody else was trying to make excuses for Iran. He's of the opinion that Iran was sending a very strong message to the Saudis, the Israelis, the Americans, and everybody else then last month, that, look, we can get your oil tankers whenever we want. We have proxies that can blow up your pipeline in Saudi Arabia whenever we want. None of your assets are safe. We can make life completely miserable for you and everybody else around the world if you're not going to stand down, come to the table, and start acting like human beings and not animals. We didn't kill anybody. We didn't set anything on fire. All we did was prove to you that we can get your ships. Now that, given the circumstances of that attack, and they all happened below the waterline, all happened right at the waterline, blah, 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 that makes sense. So fast forward to Thursday, and we had a completely different set of circumstances. And my phone will just keep binging at me if I don't, at least clear the notification. So we have a different set of circumstances. The Japanese representative, the Japanese ship captain, was saying that there were drones flying around. The American government tried to say that there were divers found in mines and all of this stuff, trying to make it look like Iran did this time what they did last month. And the Americans, of course, Pompeo and the rest of them, looked giddy with delight as to being able to call this incident out, right? It's crazy, but it is what it is. So the circumstances here are different. They actually set the tankers on fire. The crew was actually in danger. Apparently, there's now even there's now two different stories coming out about, what happened with the crew of one of the ships. The Americans are saying that the Iranians have got them hostage. The Russians are thanking them. They were Russian crew members. The Russians are thanking the Iranians for showing up and rescuing their men. They've released pictures of them sitting, relaxing, having coffee. I've seen the pictures. What are you going to say? The Americans just look really bad here, because it's very obvious that we were behind this, or in some way, either our proxies, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, some combination thereof, the Saudi Sunni militias as Saudi proxies. Somebody was involved in this. Somebody was trying to scuttle peace talks between Tehran and Japan, so that the fact that a Japanese oil tanker was attacked the same day the Japanese prime minister was in Tehran negotiating with the Ayatollah Khamenei and President Rouhani of Iran at the same time is really hinky. To be honest with you, if they really think we're that dumb as to believe that Iran would do this now, after all of the ridiculous false flags that they've thrown out over Syria and everything else, and the ham-fisted, just inarticulately clumsy incidents that we've seen over the last 3 years, for them to actually believe they were going to get away with this is just insane, to be honest with you. And so, to me, this is most likely what happened here, right? And so now here's the question. We have a history of this. Donald Trump goes to Japan last month, sits down, talks with Abe. Abe schedules a meeting to meet with Iran to be his proxy, to be Trump's proxy in opening up the negotiations. Iran, of course, will not talk to Trump whatsoever, and they shouldn't, because he has treated them so badly. You can't treat people the way Trump has treated the leadership in Iran and expect them to just come to the table. They would be lynched by their own people overnight. The same way that Trump can't back down now, because he has made such a big deal out of this. And he's been backed into a corner by the traitors within his organization. And that's Mike Pompeo, that's John Bolton, that's various members of the National Security Staff, the CIA, all of them. They're all freaking traitors, guys. And we have a history of this. Every time Trump tries to do something that is unpopular with the warmongering crowd within his government, we have a major incident later on. We have them either talking him out of it. We have some kind of incident on the ground, which makes it look like he needs to stay. Did this in Syria. We've done this now. We're doing this in the Gulf of Oman and around the Strait of Hormuz. So it's nothing new here. So now the big question is why? The big question here, in my mind, is why would John Bolton, if he was behind this, for example, let's just explore this for a second. Why would John Bolton do this? And the people that John Bolton represents, right, and his job within the United States government, why would he do this? Maybe he would do this because he's trying to convince Trump not to fire him. Because there's a credible report out there by John Curacao over Consortium News that Bolton is on very thin ice with Trump, and Trump is already working with people to interview, has already started the process of interviewing people to be Bolton's replacement. So now, if Bolton is worried about this because the Venezuela operation went sideways, he's completely tied Trump's hands on frickin' China, Taiwan, North Korea, and Iran in every way. Moreover, Trump's and the Kushner plan, the deal of the century, they can't get anybody on board. Why? Who the hell would make a deal with the United States right now? Every 5 minutes, John Bolton is urging Donald Trump to either ditch an international treaty, or the minute Trump wants to make peace with people, John Bolton goes out of his way to try and start a war with somebody else. So when you really start to think about this, at some point, what's Trump doing? Because what he's got now is a complete mess. He's got a complete mess on his hands in every way. Because the question you always have to ask yourself when you look at a situation like this is, who benefits? Who benefits from this attack done this way? Iran? No. In the same way that President Assad was accused of gassing his own people in Idlib 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, when he was winning, is insane. And it was done in the deepest of deep strongholds, and it was just, all of it was just so unbelievably sad, because anybody can see because anybody can do the basic analysis of who benefits. Cui bono? Always ask that question, and you'll know. Israel benefits. They want Iran flattened. The Saudis want Iran flattened and removed from the market. Okay? The fundamentals on the price of oil are terrible. The global economy is slowing down. There's not going to be a rally in oil unless there's a war premium put on it. The Saudis don't want to cut production. I saw something else that there was the Saudi arms bill, the bill that was going to go through the Senate to stop more arms sales to the Saudis was going to pass, and this incident happened 4 hours before that vote, and all of a sudden, immaculately, out of nowhere, a miracle occurs. And now everybody votes for it, and it's going to go through, and the Saudis are going to get their arm. We're going to sell more weapons to the Saudis. We're going to be more culpable for their atrocities in Yemen. This is great, isn't it? Because it's just so easy to move the needle and get Lindsey Graham on board and trying to show everybody how much of a tough brute man he is, Mr. Hat. Jesus. I mean, has anybody noticed that the older Lindsey Graham gets, the more he looks like Mr. Harrison from South Park? So Trump is stuck and needs to get out of this. He sent the prime minister of Japan to broker a deal, to open up the negotiations and open up some kind of peace talks with Iran. Iran cannot accept any deal from Trump that doesn't start and end with lift sanctions. Trump can't lift sanctions without looking like an idiot to all the MAGA-pedes and the pathetic losers who still think he's in charge. He's not in charge. So, I just saw, before I popped over here, I just saw the great statement by Tulsi Gabbard on this very incident, saying that President Trump needs to stop this now and needs to reverse course and open up a dialogue with Iran immediately. Otherwise, he's going to wind up in a war that he does not want. And she's absolutely right. God, every time she opens her mouth and says something anti-war, she gets hotter. Oh my God. It's crazy. So, sorry. I'm a man. What are you going to do? What's really interesting about all this as well, and I'm almost done with my prepared talks on this and prepared comments on this, and then we'll move on. Interesting commentary out of Moon of Alabama. Got to give Bernard over Moon of Alabama some mad props on this one. Very good analysis on this, and that is that what we have here. What's interesting when you dovetail Magnier's analysis of the differences between the two attacks, along with the attack by Houthi Iranian proxies on the Saudi pipeline last month. When you take that and dovetail it with what Bernard was saying over at Movement of Alabama, you get a very interesting picture. These two interpretations track, which is to say that now Iran has everything it needs for plausible deniability on any attack that happens on any ship or any oil-related asset in the entire region. Because the Americans have already shot their wad trying to get a Gulf of Tonkin incident. And now that that's happened, no one believes the United States. Iran has got proxies everywhere that they can just activate and wipe their hands of. Pompeo can be right from here forward about every one of these attacks, blaming Iran for it, and no one will ever be able to prove it. And he'll just look like more and more and more of a paranoid fat asshole that he is. It's you don't play chess with Persians when you don't know how to play the game. You don't play chess with the Russians if you think you can outbluff them. It doesn't work. These are people that don't play that game. And every time we do this, the dimwits that run our foreign policy think that just because they have the biggest stick, that's all they need in order to get what they want. And it's really, really sad. I was talking with some friends of mine yesterday who are longtime supporters of my work, going back to my Newsmax days. And they live locally. They're wonderful people. And we had lunch yesterday, and we were talking about all these things. And I said, you know, you have to assess the people that you're dealing with. In order to be a good political analyst, at the end of the day, you can, once you see the corruption, you can't unsee it. Once you see the mechanisms by which they pull off these false flags and manipulate the media and manipulate the narrative and everything else, you can't unsee it. It's like, you know, once you've jacked out of the matrix, woo, there's the code. Worse than that, then all you have to do is assess the people, their faults, their shortcomings, and boom, everything just kind of lays out in front of you like, yep, there's the code. Yep, and he's going to do this now. And that's what happens next. It's not really that hard. It doesn't take, you know, a genius to do it. All you have to really do is just look. So, that's where we are right now. And what's happening now is these guys are so inept and they're so locked in their generational bias and their own imprinting and everything else that they can't get out of it. And the only way we're going to get a change in policy, and the only way Trump's not going to get bogged down in this all the way into 2020, because Iran can make this continue, this kind of political and economic pain happen for a very long time. They can drag this out as a low intensity conflict where insurance rates on oil tankers rise unacceptably. We'll go right back to the 1980s during the Iran-Iraq War, okay? And the price of oil will rise, which will be, you know, which the Saudis want. And in some ways, even the Americans want, right? The American frackers want it. Trump wants $2 a gallon gasoline. The frackers need $80 a barrel oil. Rock meet hard place, iceberg straight ahead. The telling part of all of this, for me, was watching the markets today. Yesterday's response to this was very muted in the oil market. It's $1.50 after a $15 down move. $1.50 up after a $15 down move over 2 weeks in the price of oil. It's just short covering. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to war with Iran. No, the market just used it as an excuse to do a little short covering and to rebalance. The oil market was kind of uninteresting this morning, but gold was breaking towards 1360. A safe haven trade was on, and then all of a sudden, the gold market collapsed in the afternoon. The euro and the pound collapsed as well, and everybody came to the realization that, oh God, it's Friday, and I don't want to be short the dollar. Now, when nobody wants to be short the dollar on a Friday afternoon after a $15 up move in gold, and they sold the euro off like a penny and a half in a day and a half. Okay, it's back down to $1.12. It's going to close today, I think, at $1.12.1. Yesterday it was trading at $1.13.3. So that's 120 pips in what, 30 hours? That's a big deal. It's a big move in the euro. Okay, it means that the bounce in the euro is done, and now it's moving back down lower. So, and that the general theme of this afternoon was, I don't want to be short the dollar. Well, why don't you want to be short the dollar? Because no one knows what's going to happen this weekend. And everybody wants to be in some kind of dollar positive position between now and Monday, because the markets could look completely different by Monday morning, depending on what happens over this weekend. Because God forbid, they're attacking another oil tanker. There was a missile. There was, the Houthis lobbed missiles at a Saudi airport. The Saudis weren't able to do anything about it, other than trying to propagandize the whole thing and blame Iran for it. Like, your infrastructure is getting bombed. All you can do is complain about it. You started a war 4 years ago and of starving people left and right, and you know, you get angry when they finally lob a missile at your airport, and yet we're going to send these people who are already inept with all of our weaponry and can't take out a few Houthi rebels. We're going to send them more. We're going to bankrupt the country further. Got news for you. The Iranians are sitting there. I mean, they're not happy about this, but I mean, from a strategic standpoint, they're laughing. I mean, last week was my regular gaming session, a regular monthly Saturday afternoon gaming session. So we start at noon and we go all day long. And a good friend of mine hadn't seen much of in the last couple of years came by, and we finally got a chance to play this particular war game. It's called Battle for Rokugan. It's a Legends of the Five Rings game. Really cool little hidden bid or hidden marker, hidden army style game. Very simple, very direct, good stuff. Now, I'm a master at board state management in games like this. I've been doing it since I'm freaking 17 years old. It's one of the few types of games I just get, right? And you don't ever get, it's like you don't get involved in a land war in Asia against Tom and the dudes on the map game. It doesn't work, especially if I'm playing behind you. And this is kind of what happened the other day, watching this game play out. Like, you're watching people make bad move after bad move after bad move, and you can anticipate their moves over and over and over again. This is what the Iranians are doing right now. They're watching the Americans, and they know exactly what move we're going to make next. I did this the other day to my poor friend, and eventually he just flipped the table after 3 rounds of it, of getting his ass kicked. I'm like, sorry, that's fine. I mean, we just all, got up and left on the table, shook hands and said, I'm not angry or anything. Just, it is what happens. And yeah, I fucked you over, dude. I'm sorry. I'm really good at these games. You forgot about that. It's like, don't put me playing behind you. I'll play on the other side of the table. But, and I'm complete pants at most German Euro games. So don't sit here and think I'm busting my hand, patting myself on the back or anything. This is just the one type of game I'm incredibly good at. Years and years of experience managing, multiplayer dudes on a map style area control games. I'm just really good at it, right? Most of you would games like Risk are what the games I'm talking about. Though Risk sucks, by the way. Just a bad game in every way. So, come to the dark side, try games without dice, and then see how that happens. But, you really don't want to play diplomacy against me. So the Iranians are doing the exact same, are thinking right now, and so are the Russians. They're doing the exact same thing that I was doing the other day, which was like, I can see this move coming a mile away. You told me that you're coming after me, so let's just hold this thing back here that I need to take you out with, okay? And then we're good, and then I can, and I just, the calculus was so easy because the strategy was so obvious. And I don't mean to disparage my friend. He was doing his best given the situation in the game. It's just that he was screwed, and it was going to be me who was going to be the one to do the screwing. But that's the thing you have to realize here is that, this is not an endorsement of the Iranian government. It's not an endorsement of Russia's government or anything else. This is just rote geostrategic analysis. Okay. And that's what's going on here. So Trump has got to figure out a way to get himself out of this. If he doesn't, it's going to dog his re-election campaign. It's going to put him in a bad position. And I'm telling you, if he doesn't get this taken care of by the end of the year or the next 3 or 4 months before the campaign season starts for real, it's going to dog him because the Iranians are going to make this as difficult on him as humanly possible. They're going to extract revenge for what he's done to them. All right. I'm going to go scroll back through the comments, and then we'll go on from here. So let's see what we got in the comments. Jonathan Gillespie brings up a really great point, which is that the difference between this incident, the Gulf of Oman, and the Iraqi WMDs is that there's no uniformity of the propaganda. Absolutely. Dick Cheney is not in charge of information control. CENTCOM came out in the statement saying they have no desire for another Middle East conflict. Exactly. Trump is saying one thing, Bolton saying something else, the Saudis are saying something else, the Mossad are running around trying to, incite conflict. The Israelis are lashing out and bombing Syria wherever they can because they're worried because the Russians are and the Turks have now finally aligned in Idlib to start wiping out all of these. The Turks have finally what do you call? What's the word? Betrayed. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Betrayed their assets in Idlib, and now the process of them getting wiped out is well underway, and Erdogan has decided without a doubt that, in order to secure his future lies with Vladimir Putin and the Russians. All right. So yeah, no, it's a great note that there's all sorts of conflicting stuff coming out of the American government. The lies are just countered like they're the simplest thing imaginable. So, oh really? Really? You're accusing us of arresting and detaining the sailors? Pictures of them. Mostly they're Russians, and the Russians are thanking the Iranians for saving their men. It's just insane. There was extra incentive, I think, on Bolton's part to try and. Look, I'm sorry, but if John Bolton is worried about his position, and this to me screams that he and whomever he's working with set this one up to undermine Abe's visit to Tehran. To me, that just seems the most obvious thing. Who benefits most from this fiasco? Iran will. Bolton thought he was going to win. He's an idiot. Jonathan, I'm going to take. So Jonathan says, during the lead up to the Iraq War, Saddam was successfully branded as the villain. America looked like the hero, just as this was after the aftermath of 9/11. By the way, I've seen some polling. Right, I looked at some Twitter polling and some other polling, and I got news for you. Too many people in America actually believe Iran did this. Got news for you. The propagandas work just fine on propaganda on demonizing Iran. That's not the issue. That I disagree with you about. All right. The most obvious result was the defeat of Rand Paul's bill to prohibit arms sales to Saudi and Qatar. Yes, absolutely, Tim Cutler. I agree with you. Yeah, it got stuck defense money through the Senate, as we talked about earlier. Yeah, Dragon, I have to agree. Like I said earlier, this is a very bad. So Dragon says that the incompetence of the deep state and the U.S. diplomatic corps and the U.S. fake news media are all signs of a badly decaying empire. Okay, point. It was absolutely clumsy. These people are hell-bent on causing a chain of events that will greatly and directly destabilize the world as we know it. They are trying to do this now. I have to agree. And I think that Stoyanovich is. I tend to think in terms of this is Bolton, Netanyahu, and the Saudis saying we need to keep Trump on the straight and narrow, so that he believes that none of these people can be trusted. I mean, that's what I really think is going on here. It's like whenever there's the potential for peace breaking out, there's always an incident to try and get Trump to see the other side of it while they lobby the crap out of him. No, really. And then they give him bad intelligence, fake news, and all this shit. And he's not strong enough to stand up to it. He's not smart enough to stand up to it either. Juan Isaac says it will take the deep state to sink one of its own aircraft carriers. That's an interesting thought. To have the American people want a war with Iran. Same like with the USS Maine. I don't, in any way, manner, shape, or form, disagree with you. And I don't disagree either that that's not a likely outcome from here. Yeah, well, Tom says, lockstep, Trump pushed the narrative that Iran was responsible. I'm going to read you Trump's actual quote, and you tell me if this is a guy that really sounds on board with all of this. It's because it's a strange quote, and it says, when Trump was on Fox and Friends by telephone interview, it says it's probably got essentially Iran written all over it. Now, I know Donald Trump, that's like Trump speak. That doesn't sound like Trump believes any of this crap. I don't think he believes any of this crap. I really don't. And if the stream dropped out for a second, it's because my bandwidth dropped to almost nothing. Looks good now, though. Dragon says, yes, look, the Saudis are capable of anything. They couldn't organize an escape out of a wet paper bag. This was the U.S. or Mossad are not capable of anything. I mean, the Saudis are probably happy about trying to do this. To say that they're capable of actually pulling anything like this off is probably pretty poor. So let's see. If Bolton can tie Trump's hands behind his back diplomatically, how can Trump effectively fire him? It doesn't make sense. Oh, he can fire him. The problem is, I mean, look, Trump is trying to get out from underneath this. All he has to do here is say, look, I fired John Bolton because of all the reasons that y'all know that he's already said. Look, Trump doesn't even need to come up and give good reasons. Did he give reasons why he fired Rex Tillerson? No. He didn't. We didn't find out why he fired Tillerson until much, much later in the process. Tariffs were cause for the Civil War. Yes, the tariff of abomination. I wonder why conservatives are so for them. They are supposed to be the smart ones. They're not. They're not at all. Yeah, the MOA article is great, Thordoom. I agree. As always, a good shout out to Bernard. He does good work. He covers me when, frankly, he covers me when I can't cover everything else. Yeah, the German finance minister, Thordoom says that the German finance minister, Heiko Maas, said he needs more evidence than the video, than the quote-unquote smoking gun video that the United States provided. Hold on for just a second. Y'all aren't using any bandwidth, are you? Okay. Then I don't know what's going on. If the stream quality is poor, I'm not sure what's happening here. Let me shut some other stuff down just to make sure that I'm not like losing bandwidth in other areas of my life. Let's get rid of that too and see if that improves things at all. I don't know what's going on. It may be a buffer issue. All right. Yeah, the fact that Heiko Maas is saying that, look, the Germans have been, especially Heiko Maas, has been very, very adamant about not liking the direction of American foreign policy, certainly when it comes to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, anything having to do with German internal affairs. If anybody is really trying to make it easy for Merkel to change, to break from the United States, he's doing on that front at this point. Yeah, of course the lapdog UK goes on. You know, I don't know what's going on tonight, guys. I'm going to have to say I don't have the bandwidth to make this run tonight. This is not working. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not getting any bandwidth out of here tonight whatsoever. The stream health is really, really poor. So I don't know why. Yeah, no, it's terrible. I'm watching what's happening, what's going on, and there's no bandwidth going out. There's no I've got no bandwidth. Well, let's see if it'll hold up for a little bit. But yeah, this has been pretty poor. Can't quite do it without video. All right. It's really frustrating, actually, and it really destroys my concentration, my ability to actually keep it together and keep a train of thought. I really hate being I really hate being interrupted like that. All right. Well, let's see if we can. It seems to be stable for now, but I don't know what's going on. I mean, the numbers are really poor coming off of my end. So we'll go from where we'll just pick up where I left off. So Thordoom got a great comment here, which says the problem is that if Trump won't do anything where he looks weak, no, he won't. He will always double down in order to make himself look strong, because he's not capable of understanding that sometimes strength comes from talking, not from dictating. But Trump doesn't know how to do anything other than yell at people. That's the problem. And this is his narcissism. This is his, these are his character defects. And that's why we're in the state we're in. He won't ignore, and he can't let anything go. He can't let any slight go. He can't let any insult go. He doesn't have the emotional maturity. He's got the emotional maturity of a 6-year-old. But I guess that, that makes me, in the minds of people like William Justice and others, that makes me just, an idiot, because Trump's not capable of, because I'm not capable of overlooking Trump's personal defects as a human being when I'm doing analysis on his behavior. Give a fucking break. I mean, it's ridiculous. At least the fake news media is pushing back on Trump when it comes to Iran. They need to keep defending Obama's stance. Well, that's one. Yeah, Legion Trooper, that's an interesting way of putting it. I think the other way of putting it is that they're not actually down with the whole let's go to war with Iran thing. I think that has been because they want to go to war with Iran. They're being told, yes, let's go to war with Iran, but it's Trump pushing it. So they don't like, they don't want to give Trump anything that he likes. So that even puts themselves in a position to push back on him when this is going on. Liberty Cat says, I already said rest in peace when Pence told the graduates we were pretty much going to war. I don't know. I mean, Mike Pence is worthless and a crazed dispensationalist just like Pompeo, and frankly, a pathetic human being in every way. Anybody who wishes for war of the kind and type that will occur if we were to attack Iran, pathetic is a good word. Evil's another one. I don't know. I think pathetic just covers it. No, Tom, I don't think that Tom says, okay, so switching topics a little bit, the whole thing about legal immigration push was to placate the Koch brothers lobbying group. I don't think so. I think this is purely about the fact that Trump's going to try and brain drain China and India and everywhere else and bring them all over here to run all the new factories that their money is going to build in our new America while the Americans don't get the jobs. That's what I think is going on. Did I read John Kirikow on Bolton? I opened the thing, my comments tonight about this. This is one of the reasons why I really do believe that that John Bolton is intimately involved in this incident, because he's trying to save his job by saying, look, Don, look, Mr. President Trump, no, really, Mr. President, we really need to wipe out Iran. Look at what they did to the oil tanker. And he's just so transparent and such a fucking baby. It's not even funny. Okay, I'm gonna switch gears completely, talk and get off of the war front. I want to talk about Italy for a few minutes. I did have an article up the other day about Italy and the mini bot, and I want to explain some of that stuff because that's a very important issue as well. Bad news. Council of Ministers has recommended, or the European, I think the advisory council to the Council of Ministers has recommended, of course, that they extend Russian sanctions on over Crimea for another year. I don't know that the vote's actually gone through yet. I think it goes through on the 23rd, I want to say, but I'm not sure. But let's talk about Matteo Salvini and his troika of technocrats and the rest of those guys and what's going on with them trying to issue a parallel currency. Now, Martin Armstrong weighed in on this subject this morning, which was interesting. And his thoughts on this were that it's all about taking Italy out of the euro. It just has to be done in stages, and the groundwork has to be prepped. I agree with Martin that that's ultimately where it goes. But at the same time, I also think that it doesn't necessarily need to go that way if Brussels is rational. Now, is Brussels rational? No. So there's always the possibility that Italy could stay in the euro if Brussels would just allow for some kind of reform. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen because Brussels' goal is to destroy Italy and scoop up all of its assets for pennies on the dollar and transfer them to Germany. Good news for you. That's the gig. Just like Greece, just like Spain, just like the rest of them. So there's a bill on the table in the Italian parliament, or if it hasn't been tabled, it's about to be tabled. They're discussing it, which is to introduce the mini bot, which is a small denomination bill of the treasury. Bot, bill of treasury, mini, small denomination. So mini bot. And it's an idea that was originally floated by Yanis Varoufakis, the former finance minister from Greece, with Syriza, and as a way to issue a local currency to circulate and for Greeks to pay taxes in, that circulates next to the euro and allows for and can properly value and circulate at an exchange rate relative to the euro that more accurately prices the domestic economy than the euro does, because the euro is not capable of that, and it's destroying all of these countries. That's the plan. So of course Brussels is going to oppose this in every way. It's going to oppose it root and branch. Here's the problem for Salvini, and it's an interesting situation for Salvini. And this is going to be the last thing I talk about tonight, and then I'm going to go, because this will take about 10 minutes to talk about. So, here's the gig. Salvini has a real problem within his own government. He's got a troika of technocrats that he has to deal with. First one is President Sergei Mattarella. The second one is his prime minister, Giuseppe Conte. And the third one is his finance minister, Giovanni Tria. The latter two were handpicked by the first one as a condition for Salvini and Di Maio to even form the government that they formed. Mattarella, as president, kept vetoing their choices for prime minister and for finance minister, because Mattarella, being the quintessential Italian swamp rat and Brussels bagman, refused to allow for a true Eurosceptic government to take power, that he wanted some kind of veto control and some shackles on Salvini and Di Maio and the new parliament. So that's where we are. Now, Mattarella doesn't leave office until 2022. He's elected to a 7-year term, which he was elected in 2015. He's also old. And by the way, when he inserted himself, as he did in last year's coalition talks, to the extent that he did, there was a move to impeach him. There wasn't enough support within the government to actually do so and get rid of him. And that's where things get interesting. Because what these guys are doing right now is they are trying to retain as much control over Salvini and Di Maio's legislative agenda, i.e., vetoing the tax cuts, going along with Brussels about the budget restrictions and the fines and this and that and all that stuff, while Salvini and Di Maio keep working bills and budgets through Parliament that they're trying to actively block. Now, the mini-bot thing is part of this. The same thing with the trying to effectively repatriate the Italian gold, sovereign gold, by taking it out of, by selling it back to the government from the Bank of Italy, forcing the Bank of Italy to sell it back to the government, and thereby take it out of the hands, eventually, effectively, out of the hands of the ECB, who are hopping mad about this, because, you know, that would completely undermine their balance sheet. So, get control of the sovereign gold, introduce a parallel currency, and now all of a sudden, Italy has a perfectly reasonable path out of the euro that doesn't even faze them, right? So, the big problem here is dealing with these three assholes who are trying to stop any reform and actually working for Brussels, just like Theresa May was working for Brussels during all the Brexit negotiations. But here's the gig, and this is where I wrote an article about this the other day in response to Mike Shudlock's great piece on the economics of the situation, but not necessarily the politics of the situation. Politics I understand a lot better, and this is what I can add to the conversation. So here's the gig. Think about what happens here. Di Maio just survived a leadership, a vote of confidence in his leadership to maintain control over 5-star. 5-star is only polling about 18%. Lega is polling about 35%. Everybody's trying to goad Matteo Salvini of Lega to call for snap elections, take control of the government. But that would make him look like the bad guy. That would derail and slow down any of the reform bills that are absolutely necessary to maintain, one, their populist support, and two, get the agenda set. Better to continue to push all of these things forward and force Mattarella or Conte to dissolve the government in protest over the way Salvini and Di Maio were running things. At that point, Salvini can turn around and he can spin all of that, and Di Maio can go back to their constituents and say, look, this is what you elected us to do, and they're stopping us. And Conte wasn't our pick for prime minister. Tria wasn't our pick for finance minister. This is all Mattarella, and Mattarella is working for Brussels. And this is what you hired us to do, and they're not letting us do. They changed the electoral laws, all of this stuff. So now they can go back and they can sell all that stuff as they're the good guys. So that if Conte threatens to take the government down and does so, well, then the election will go forward, and most likely you'll see 5-star capable of outpolling the Democrats, probably polling back about 22-23%, and Lega will probably poll 35 to 38%, and therefore they'll wind up with a greater majority in the parliament than they currently have together now. If they let Conte and Mattarella do this, if they do it the other way, they're going to be in trouble. Okay? They probably won't even get 50% between them. They'll have to go to the Brothers of Italy or Forza Italia to be able to form a coalition. And at that point, they're fucking done. Okay? That's why everybody's out there. That's why the German newspapers and the American newspapers and Bloomberg and everybody's talking about, well, is Salvini going to take down the government? Is Salvini going to call for snap elections? He's just enough of an asshole that he... No. He's not doing any of that. He's like, no, I got a budget to deal with. 5-stars on board with their portion of the legislative agenda. Di Maio is in lock-sync about, yes, we're going to go for flat taxes. We want to do all these we want to do this stuff. We're going to do the infrastructure spend and all of this stuff. Meanwhile, Brussels is losing their mind, turning around and saying, you're going to spend $4 billion too much. We're going to scold you and we're going to fine you. And we're going to fine you $4 billion that you don't have, that we're going to have to buy. Okay. I mean, if I'm Salvini, I'm like, that's no skin off my ass. You're going to buy the debt anyway, because no one else is. So, the proof is in the pudding here. Just like in Britain, Jeremy Corbyn's not out there calling for a vote of no confidence in the Tory government, even though he should, even though there's no way under normal circumstances, no way in fucking hell that the current government in Britain should be in charge. But they're not doing it because they know that the current parliament they have is the best chance they have to stop Brexit. So that parliament's staying in power for as long as possible. Same thing's going to happen in Italy. If you see Conte and back down, because he already has backed down. He effectively said, He effectively told Salvini, I want to know what the agenda is going to be so I can decide whether or not I'm going to agree with it or not. If not, I'm going to quit. Notice how he's still on the job. Notice how Salvini hasn't given him an inch. Because Salvini went, fungal. He said, fungal. All right? You're going to do your job and you're going to like it. And if you don't like it, fucking take down the government. Then we're going to have even more power. Because then we'll have an impeachment proof. Then we might even wind up with an impeachment proof majority and Mattarella will be out on his ass too. That's my read on the situation in Italy. And I think that that's actually really, really interesting. Why doesn't Salvini form a coalition with the center-right parties? Jonathan, I've been over this 1,000 times. Because they're all fucking swamp rats. They all work for Brussels. They're all fucking stalking horses for Brussels. There's only one other center-right party in Italy, and that's Forza Italia. And Salvini broke with them in the first place because Berlusconi was trying to was trying to cut a deal with the fucking Democrats to put Renzi back in charge. The only other right-wing party in all of Italy is the Brothers of Italy. They get 5%. They can't break the 5% barrier. So the only center-right, they have 35% support. They've destroyed all the other quote-unquote center-right parties. Five Star is a Eurosceptic populist party. They may be leftist in their agenda, but it's about Italy first. They're leftist nationalists. You actually want a nationalist government. Doesn't matter about the fucking which side of the chamber you sit on. Your both should be focused on getting rid of the assholes first, and then we'll figure everything else out later. It's the same thing that's going to happen in Britain. Nigel Farage is bringing the left and the right, bringing Labour and the Tories together to get rid of the fucking British deep state. It's what Trump should be doing, and he's not. Arcvault, socialism is not hard to define. It's really simple. State control of the means of production. And I mean by the state with a lowercase s, meaning centralized control of the means of production. Someone makes a decision as to how much you produce versus him. It's a barter economy. Not that hard. All of these things are flavors of the same thing. They're all just versions of collectivism. Socialism, communism, Nazism, Marxism. It's all the same shit. And at the end of the day, the best way to look at this today in modern parlance, all of them are an offshoot of postmodernist Marxism as promulgated by the French assholes of the 70s. Have I seen how hard the MSN is going after Corbyn? Of course. Because Tony Blair wants one of his people running Labour, and then there can be a general election. So they're trying to get rid of Corbyn. Look, Alistair Campbell, remember right after the EU parliamentary vote, Alistair Campbell, who's like basically Blair's fucking right-hand man, came out and said that he voted for the Lib Dems? You remember? He did it on the BBC, no less. That was all calculated. And then Jeremy Corbyn had to throw him out of the party. Do you know why? Do you know why Corbyn had to throw him out of the party? Because if he didn't, he would look bad. What Campbell did was he made Corbyn look, he put Corbyn in a no-win situation. If he throws Campbell out of the party for voting for the Lib Dems, then he looks like he's overreacting. And that's exactly the way they spun it. And if he doesn't do it, he looks weak and doesn't have control over his own party when he can't even keep one of the most prominent members of the party in line voting for his agenda. It's all about Tony Blair getting control of Labour again. Oh, Alistair Campbell is the biggest swamp creature he's horrible. I mean, he's so bad I can't even watch him. I mean, he's like Hillary bad. I mean, seriously. Like, those two in a room together on my television, that would be like, okay, remember Clockwork Orange? Yeah, that's me. You'd have to like put me in a chair like Alex in Clockwork Orange watching those two for anything longer than about 30 seconds. I literally would start vomiting. No, actually, honestly, Brett Harris, Jeremy Corbyn is actually not an improvement over those fucking globalist assholes. Corbyn, for all of his faults as a card-carrying Marxist, understands that those globalist assholes are the real enemy. He's just too weak a leader to actually fight them effectively. In some ways, honestly, he's like the flip side of Donald Trump. He knows who the bad guys are. He's not a strong enough person and doesn't have the political moxie, and he doesn't have the chops to fight them. That's his problem. If he did, he'd be dangerous. Archibald, you're breaking down the whole idea about socialism too far. It's not, they're all variations on the same thing. At the end of the day, look for the gun. If there's a gun, it's socialism. If there's not a gun, it's libertarianism. At the end of the day, it's either the non-aggression principle or it isn't. Okay? And remember, hardcore libertarian here. I break it down. This is one of the few things in this life that I'm incredibly reductionist about. I'm willing to, because that's the divide. The divide is over that. Do individuals have sovereign rights to endowed by themselves or the creator or whomever by virtue of the fact that they exist, or their creator, which is in this case the antecedent rights of their parents, to live their life free of coercion to the best of their ability? Or does the needs of the individual, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? Or the one? Right? This is the issue. And this is how you define community. And it's how you define all of these things. And I've had these discussions. I did one of these recently, so I didn't really want to go over it for like an hour, because it would take me an hour to do this right. But don't split hairs here. The difference between communism, fascism, quote unquote socialism, mercantilism, state capitalism, whatever, all of that shit, stakeholder capitalism, all of it, those are all variations on the theme. They're all different. They're all differences by degree, not kind. They are all collectivism. There's just different flavors of collectivism, but they're all collectivism. Now you can call that socialism, you can call it communism. I use all the terms interchangeably, because at the end of the day, they're all fucking horse shit. And then there's respect for individuals and the non-aggression principle on the other side, saying it's never right to use aggression to achieve political or social goals. It's never right. It's never moral. It's never right. Sometimes you do it anyway, and then you pay the consequences of that transgression. And the penalty may be not much, depending on the person that you transgressed. But always that first, that's superior. That will always achieve for people in general, and especially in the greatest context, will achieve the least amount of corruption, the least amount of loss of efficiency, and the least amount of depredation than the other way around. The socialists always argue that we have to take away people's rights in order to keep them alive. It's all this friggin' Hobbesian dialectic bullshit. That A and B, you and me, would fight uncontrollably if S wasn't there, the state wasn't there to keep us from fighting each other. It's bullshit. It completely precludes the idea that we see value in each other. Hobbes was the original fucking Gothling, for fuck's sake, and he just needed to be. Honestly, all of his books just need. I hate to say this, but all of his books should have been burned. It's like Marx. These are ideas that are so pernicious and so sad and pathetic, but because they speak to people who've been victims of the concentrations of power of other Marxists, of other people, of rapacious sociopaths and psychopaths who don't understand the mechanisms by which these people come to and acquire and maintain power. Because they wind up, these very people who complain about this stuff are the ones who are giving them the most power in the fucking first place. That's the big problem. Yeah, it's not about the splitting hairs between whether or not socialism works versus this. No, bullshit. You stick with me long enough, dude, you will either walk away because you can't handle the argument because I will not budge, or I will make the argument to you in such a way that you see what I'm talking about. And I've converted more libertarians than just about it, more people to the efficacy of being a libertarian, and not in all forms of practical sense, but in the philosophical sense first, and then we start talking about pragmatism. Then we start talking about how we deal with the real world. But I've done it better and more so than just about anybody alive right now. And I can do it with you. I can do it with anybody. But I'm not going to do it tonight. Because tonight, I'm done. It's Friday. Tomorrow is my Father's Day because we've got people coming over on Sunday. So I'm going to go spend the rest of the evening with my wife, who's downstairs making me brownies, which I shouldn't be eating, but I'm going to eat anyway because it's Father's Day. And then tomorrow is a steak. So y'all take care. You have a great weekend. Sorry about the technical difficulties earlier, but it is what it is. Hey, they can't all be good. Have a great night. We'll talk again on Monday. I probably will not do a live stream this weekend. Maybe a late night one tomorrow night. Maybe, I don't know. Well, that's about the only time I see myself having any kind of time to do so. So you guys have a great weekend. Be well. Install Brave. Get off the Google train. Y'all know the drill. Donate if you can. Tell your friends. Tell your family. You know the drill. You guys be well. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.